been dark.
Well, it was actually a bit. Yes. And I do have the most horrendous bright pink hat, jacket, and so you probably thought, oh my God, I'm going to ignore that one.
Right.
Okay, we're now live.
We're now live, people. Good evening, councillors, officers, and the general public who are watching on YouTube. Sorry, this is the Development Control meeting on committee meeting Tuesday the 24th of November. This is a meeting where the public are allowed to attend, obviously if you're watching on YouTube, but the only time that the public may participate is when they've previously asked, and we have made arrangements for them to speak. The meeting will follow the usual format: apologies for absences, declarations of interest by the committee members, and this evening we have 2 items on the agenda. I will ask each of the officers who will each give a presentation and a recommendation for the said item. We have 2 speakers and 1 letter email to be read out this evening. Each of the speakers will have 3 minutes, and when everyone has spoken, the councillors will then ask their questions of the officers. I will be asking for a little bit more help from our head of planning, because due to the swapping over of emails, we were a little bit late in getting some of the information through, so it will just be clarified just in case anyone hasn't had as much opportunity to study it as they would like. So could I have apologies for absence, please? I know I have an apology from Councillor Bob Isles.
And I have apologies from Councillor Latter, Chair.
Thank you. And also Anthony Dady, Councillor Anthony Dady is having difficulties because he can't get into WhatsApp or his council emails at the moment. So he may or may not join us. Does anyone have any personal or prejudicial or non-prejudicial declarations to make today? No. Thank you. Well, then can we go to application, the item number 1, application 20/00209/DPA to develop the land associated for the erection of 2 detached dwellings at 26 Brooks Grove, Corby.
Do we need to admit the speakers before we start this? Yeah.
Sorry?
We need to admit.
So we're admitting Mr. Bowes, Chair.
Oh, right.
He's the speaker on this item.
Right. Do we have Mr. Hugill?
So, Chair, Mr. Hugill is for the Prize Hall application.
I see. So we're letting in the speaker, Mr. Bowes, for the first item. Right.
Yeah.
You will be asked to speak, Mr. Bowes, at the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Could I have the slides, please? Have you got the slides, Pauline?
Laura is actually trying to load the slides for you, Paul.
Okay.
Sorry, I lost my Zoom there for a moment. Right, let me share my screen. Oh, it's kicked me out. Sorry, hold on. Apologies, I've got to log back in on VPN. It's dropped me out for some reason. Can you see that now?
Yes, thank you. Okay, good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee, and to everyone else joining us on Zoom this evening. This is planning application 20/00209/DPA, which seeks planning permission to develop the land associated with 26 Brooks Grove, Corby, for 2 detached dwellings. The application is being reported to the Development Control Committee due to the number of neighbour objections received. Next slide, please. This is the location plan for the application site. Brooks Grove is a cul-de-sac, and number 26 has existing benefits from a large corner plot. The Lloyd Conservation Area boundary runs to the rear of the application site, so to the east of the application site as you look at the plan on your screen. Next slide, please. This slide shows the proposed site layout. 2 detached dwellings are proposed, both of which would have adequate garden space. The dwellings do come to within 5 metres of the rear boundary. However, due to the layout of the dwellings and neighbouring dwellings, officers are satisfied that no adverse amenity issue will arise. Notwithstanding this, should members move to approve the proposal, officers recommend the inclusion of conditions relating to boundary treatments and landscaping in order to safeguard neighbour amenity. No on-site parking is provided. However, the street benefits from unrestricted on-street parking, and I will return to highways issues later in this presentation. Next slide, please. The key determining issues are as follows: the principle of development, the design and impact upon the character of the area, neighbouring amenity, and highways. As the proposal site is located within an established residential area, which benefits from good local facilities, including a school, public transport, and established green spaces, officers are satisfied that the principal development in this instance is acceptable. Next slide, please. The next 2 slides show the proposed elevation and floor plans for the 2 dwellings. Effectively, they mirror each other and will comprise of a hall, toilet, 2 lounges, and a kitchen at ground floor level. At first floor level, the proposal will provide 3 bedrooms and a family bathroom. Next slide, please. The proposed dwellings have a width of 5.7 metres, a depth of 8.8 metres, an eaves height of 5.2 metres, and a maximum ridge height of 7 metres. This ties in with the surrounding dwellings. Next slide, please. A full public consultation exercise has been undertaken. Objections have been received, and I will talk about these in a moment. In terms of statutory consultations, Corby Borough Council environmental health officers have no objection to the proposal, However, they recommend the inclusion of a condition for unexpected contamination should approval be granted. The Conservation Officer was consulted due to the proximity of the proposed development in relation to the adjacent conservation area and has no objections. Northamptonshire County Council Highways have requested the submission of a parking beat survey in order to assess the parking situation in the locality. Officers are satisfied that this can be conditioned should planning permission be granted. The Environment Agency had no comments to make. Next slide, please. 7 neighbour objections have been received. The reason for the objections include those as set out on the slide, which I will now talk about in more detail. With regard to design and visual impact, officers' view is that the proposed dwellings have been designed to match the style of the existing dwellings in the area and neighbouring properties. The dwellings are also of a design that will reasonably harmonise with their surroundings. The Conservation Officer concurs with this. Details regarding the proposed material can be secured by condition should planning permission be granted. The proposed dwelling will be located in the corner of the cul-de-sac, and officers consider that the dwelling would not be overly prominent in the street scene. Whilst we do acknowledge that the proposed dwelling would result in some change to the appearance of the street scene at the corner of the cul-de-sac in terms of enclosure, it considered that on balance, an acceptable level of openness would still remain between the 2 detached dwellings. With regard to loss of privacy, officer assessments have concluded that the proposal would not result in overlooking of the neighbouring properties or a loss of privacy to a level that would warrant refusal of the application. Officers consider that the natural screening would mitigate against any adverse impact in terms of privacy or overlooking. However, a condition can be applied in relation to boundary treatments and landscaping to secure this. The proposal has been assessed and passes the 25 and 45 degree light tests, and officers are satisfied that there would not be any unacceptable loss of light or overshadowing to neighbouring dwellings. Objections have been raised in regard to parking. Northamptonshire Highways have requested that a parking beat survey be undertaken, and the applicant agreed to a pre-commencement condition to ensure that this survey is completed, submitted and approved by officers prior to the commencement of any works. Matters relating to a loss of view, the impact of a proposed development on the value of existing properties, along with allegations regarding existing noise and works undertaken, are not material planning considerations and cannot be taken into account in the assessment of this application. Allegations relating to existing work undertaken would instead be a matter for the council's enforcement team. Next slide, please. On balance, subject to the conditions set out in the officer report, the proposal for the erection of 2 detached dwellings in this location is considered to be acceptable in terms of its design, layout and appearance in the context of the area, and will not result in any significant adverse impact on visual amenity, residential amenity or highway safety. Next slide, please. As such, subject to the conditions recommended in the officer report, the proposal is considered to be policy compliant. Next slide, please. The recommendation is for approval. Thank you. Madam Chair, further to my presentation, I would now like to read to members an objection that was received by officers today from a neighbour. I do not have access to Zoom. However, I do wish for my objection to the planning of 2 detached dwellings to stand. I would put to the committee that these dwellings would significantly impact on my family's privacy. The drawings do not do justice to how close these proposed dwellings would be to my back fence, and I would urge that these measurements are checked. The work already carried out on the property has been carried out with no regard to the families around them. Removing asbestos in a non-regulated way and the burning of plastics, beds, filling the immediate area with thick black smoke If this is how they clear debris from the house, I don't think how they would carry out building works, as so many of the works so far have been complete with shortcuts. Also, the cutting down of a major tree that was home to many wildlife with no regard to the nest that it housed. The impact of parking on Brooks Grove is already an issue for those that live on the street, and an increase would create further issues, not only for residents, but for emergency vehicles. These areas would be of significant importance to me and my family, and I would greatly appreciate it if my statement would be read on my behalf at your meeting. That concludes the statement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd just like to welcome Councillor Anthony Dady. Unfortunately, as you have not been present during the whole of this item, you will not be able to vote, but please do ask questions. Thank you. So could we have the first speaker, please, Mr. Bowes?
Hi there. Good
Hello.
evening.
You have, bear with me 1 second. You will have 3 minutes to speak.
Yeah.
And you just before the end. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you.
Okay, well, good evening to the rest of you as well. Yeah, my name's James Bowes. I reside at 28 Brooks Grove, which is obviously next door to number 26, who would want to be carrying out the work. Obviously, I was an objection to this proposal for many reasons. As I've only got 3 minutes, I'll just go into a few. Myself and my wife, we work quite long hours. I finish at 6 in the day, and I get home around 6:10 most nights, and so does my wife, and we can barely park at the moment. So with regards to parking, that's already going to be one of the biggest issues for us. We sometimes have to park on the verge, which is next to a parking bay at the moment, which isn't ideal because it's churning up the grass, but there's nowhere else for us to park sometimes, so we're sort of limited for options. With regards to other issues, obviously, the work that's been carried out to 26 itself at the moment, sometimes that goes on to sort of 10, 11 at night, where I've had to bang on the wall repeated times to sort of, you know, nip that in the bud. Obviously trying to get to sleep, as you can imagine. Again, obviously for nature, the way the tree was demolished this year, well, there's 2 trees that were demolished in that garden, just seemed to be, there's just not very much sort of care and consideration there. And again, obviously the removal of asbestos shows that the health and safety of neighbours isn't really taken into consideration by these guys. Another thing as well, a lot of what you'll see in the objections we sort of can concur and agree with. But yeah, again, that's sort of our main concerns really. I think the most that's going to be affected is number 24 in the corner, because I've got the proposal here in my hand and I can see that already the dwelling 26B, the proposal for that looks like it's right on their fence line. So I don't know how that doesn't, you know, invade privacy of number 24. And they're sort of the main points really, and the parking is definitely a big issue. We've took photos at different times of day over the last couple of weeks, which I can happily send by email, to prove that the parking bay is a nightmare. And obviously with the average household these days having 2 cars, that's at a minimum, say 4 cars, for example. If they've not got off-road parking there, that bay is going to be even worse. So I really don't see how the parking can be allocated for, in my opinion, and a few others' opinions from speaking to neighbours. And that's sort of the main points really. Obviously, yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for your time there. Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowes. We will ask you to leave the meeting, but you can continue to watch this on YouTube. Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Do we have any questions, please? Councillor Addison.
Thank you, Chair. Brooks Grove is in my ward, but I haven't been contacted by any of the residents there, so I've not discussed this with anybody. I am concerned. I do know the area well. The parking is a big issue there. but I'm also concerned about, I can't really see from the site plan just how close these buildings will be, especially I think it's 26B will be to the next property. I know it's not a consideration for us tonight, but I would like some feedback on what actually happened regarding the trees, whether they were taken down out during the nesting time, and what we can do about that, and also what investigation is happening, again, I know outside this meeting, about the burning of the rubbish and the asbestos. Thank you.
I have Councillor Kane and Councillor DL when we've spoken to when we've heard Paul Barber, and then Mr. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chair. Just some clarification, please, really, from Paul.
Actually, do you want to just bear with me 1 second? Paul, do you want to hear all questions? Did you wish to answer Councillor Addison's questions first?
Yeah, sure. With regard to the parking, obviously this was raised in most of the objections that we've received. However, officers are satisfied that a condition for a parking beat survey to assess the parking in the area can be conditioned, and then from the results of that, you know, we can ensure that the scheme doesn't detrimentally impact the area any further.
Councillor Addison, do you want to come back?
Yes. So what condition are you going to put on that they have to have off-road parking? Because when you go round there, the parking is awful. There isn't any space.
If I could just ask my manager, Edward, just to comment.
Councillor, a parking beat survey condition will be put or is already attached to the officer's recommendation. And the applicant, before commencement, it's a pre-commencement condition, before they start, they will have to carry out a survey to show the level of on-street parking available in the immediate vicinity, not just on Brooks Grove. So effectively, to show provisions of on-street parking, I think it's Welland Road, which leads into Brooks Grove. So that long stretch and the availability on either side of Welland Road and also on Brooks Grove and adjacent streets within a comfortable walking distance of Brooks Grove. And that's standard that most local authorities undertake this sort of condition. The applicant will have to carry out the survey over a period of time to demonstrate the level of on-street availability parking. And that will then be submitted and shared with the Highways Authority, who will concur with the findings. And that there's a scientific, if you like, method of doing that. So it has to be done at particular intervals to measure the level of availability of on-street parking. The majority of dwellings in Brooks Grove do not have off-street parking because of the nature of the cul-de-sac. And if we go back to the location plan, Laura. Is it possible to go back to the location plan? No?
I think most councillors have a copy of that.
Okay.
Oh, it's okay. I think we might have it.
The location plan, Laura, please. Okay. As you can see from the location plan, most of the houses are set behind large grass verges to the front of their dwellings. And as you can see, the cul-de-sac is formed in a way that it allows on-street parking within bays. So the majority of dwellings would, in fact, be parking on-street. There are a few that have off-street parking through drop curbs, but that's not predominant in Brooks Grove. So the applicant will be required by condition to demonstrate that there is ample on-street parking both at Welland Road, Brooks Grove, and the surrounding streets. And of course, when you park, you've got to walk comfortably to the proposed dwellings. And that will have to be demonstrated by way of the survey.
Thank you.
For that, officers, but having walked that beat many times, I could tell you the results of that survey now. Thank you.
Councillor Judy Kane, next to speak, please.
Thank you, Chair. 3 things, just to echo Jean's concerns about the parking. My son has a friend who lives in Brooksgrove, and it is a nightmare. Even trying to park on Welland Road at peak times is crazy. But yeah, I can tell you now what the result of that survey will be. Anyway, my other comments, that's just one has been answered. Apologies if I missed this in your presentation, Paul. There was a thing under the objections that said hazardous smells. I'm just not clear what those are, what's causing them. Could you just clarify for me, please?
Certainly. From the objections received, the smells are mainly related to the burning of plastic waste, which has been alleged by the neighbours. However, as I said in my report, this isn't a material planning consideration, and to my knowledge, no complaints have been received by the council in regard to this formally.
Yeah, could I just come back on that? Is that not an environmental hazard if people are burning plastics? Because you can get all sorts of, not only nasty nifs, but nasty gases that can certainly harm people with respiratory issues.
Potentially, however, environmental health were consulted on the application and they've raised no objection to the scheme. They've not raised any concerns.
Councillor Kane, if I could just add, if an applicant is carrying out the burning of material within the garden and it's causing a nuisance in terms of smell, it's something that we would have picked up formally through the enforcement complaint process. There is nothing formally that has come through. So in planning terms, it remains an allegation, but the application before us is to do with the principle of development as opposed to what's being alleged. There is a process that occupants within the street can instigate and the council will investigate. We haven't got any record of such a complaint formally.
Thank you. Councillor Alison DL.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted some clarification because I don't think the site plan is particularly clear. The development of number 26B, is the side wall of that house actually forming the boundary of the divide between the two properties, or is there a fence the other side of the side of the wall which separates 24 from number 26B?
I'll hand over to the case officer, but it would be normal that all applicants on a scheme of this size would have to provide a boundary treatment. So you would not be allowed to use the structure of a building as part of the boundary. The building would have to be contained within a proper treated fence wall or vegetation of some sort.
Can we ask for clarification on that?
Yeah, if you go back to the plans, the red line, you will see. If we go back to the...
It's very close, isn't it, to... there's almost like a small building in number 24.
Okay, so if I can just explain, Councillor DL, everything will have to stay within the red line. Yeah. And as you can see, number 28, there is a gap between 28 and the proposed building, and there will be a fence wall there, a fence as the boundary.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kevin Watt, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, on this point, officers state that it's in keeping with other houses in the street. All the other houses in this street are semi-detached properties, apparently built in the centre of their sort of plots. These appear to be detached properties built on the outer extremities of their plots and somewhat encroaching on other properties, much closer than the existing properties are in this street. There is a good distance between the other properties. So that doesn't seem to be in keeping with the other properties. This parking is an issue. What we've got here is we've got 6 properties at the end of this cul-de-sac, end of this street that already share, so that's potentially 12 vehicles. Now we're going to add another. A little
louder, please, Councillor Watt.
Okay. Now we're going to add another 4 vehicles to that 12, potential 12, all at the end. And I noticed that officers say that it's a comfortable walking distance. Well, we all know what a comfortable walking distance is. It's just 5 feet from your property. That's what it is. So, and if these buildings, these houses are built here, we are now asking the existing residents to walk a comfortable distance to park their vehicles. So I'm unhappy with that there is no off-street parking required, and I don't think that the houses are in keeping with the rest of the street. And just because there is a space doesn't mean we have to build on it. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor, if I could just respond. This is what is referred to as an infill development. The application site benefits from a generous side land associated with the host building. The parking beat survey will have to follow a particular standard that is set by the the Local Highways Authority, which is the Northamptonshire County Council. So in terms of objective empirical evidence, the applicant will be required to demonstrate that it meets those standards and if you like, the requirements that are set out in that standard. So it's not something that can be done without reference to an objective assessment that will be further interrogated by the Local Highways Authority, and it's upon their satisfaction that this condition will be deemed as being discharged. So that's the first thing. And in terms of the comfortable walking distance, that will be defined also by the Local Highways Authority in their survey requirement. So the applicant will be required to refer to the Local Highways Authority's parking standards and the beat survey standard, and will have to formulate a result, or if you like, a calculation of what's available on street, both on Welland and the surrounding streets. And then that will be forwarded to the Highways Authority, who will then inform the local planning authority whether they're satisfied with the findings. So that's the first thing. Secondly, it is an infill development, and as a planning authority, we have got a policy against infill developments to the side of land that is generously available that could act as an infill or a bookend development. Councillor Watt, I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Yes, would you like to go back to him, Councillor Watt?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So the applicant will undertake the survey and it will not be carried out by independent means then?
The survey will have to be carried out by independent means, and it would have to be assessed by the Highways Authority as being satisfactory. And it's a condition that have been imposed, which effectively means that the development cannot go ahead until the Highways Authority is satisfied that they've demonstrated there is ample parking both on Brooks Grove, Welland Road, and the surrounding streets, and that the survey follows their standard, which is publicly available on the Local Highways Authority's website. So they would have to engage a traffic engineer to do that survey.
Thank you, Councillor Anne Brown, followed by Councillor Dady when our question's been answered. Thank you.
Yeah, I just don't like the idea of the traffic survey being done after we've actually passed this, the building of the properties. You know, it would have seemed more sense to have that done before the building of properties is given the go-ahead.
Councillor, if I could answer that. That survey is a pre-commencement condition, so they can't develop until they satisfy the Local Highways Authority and the council.
Could you help us with this, please? Because if that is so if the BEAT survey creates an adverse problem, would that mean that the planning development would have to come back to us?
Yeah, I mean, effectively, officers would then have to speak with the applicant and say that the survey has been unacceptable to the Highways Authority, and you know, they will ask them to do two things: either justify the figures given in the survey, or alternatively, which is an option that's open to the applicant could have a condition that this is a car-free development. So the authority has two options: to interrogate the data further, deem that it's unacceptable and that the applicant should go away and, you know, effectively carry out a further study, or impose a condition that this is a car-free development.
Thank you. I think that clears that little bit up. Councillor Dady.
Thank you. First of all, apologies for being late. I think there was some technical error. I was about 5 minutes being told your host will let you in soon. I had to leave the meeting and log in again and so on. Anyway, looking at the plan, I would say when that cul-de-sac was originally designed and built, that bit at the end would have been a turning area. So effectively, those houses haven't got any parking there at the end of the cul-de-sac. Now, the thing is, councillors who know the area better than me are saying it's already a problem. And this saying, we'll say it's a car-free development. Obviously, that won't happen. People will have cars. So could we say, because there's plenty of space in front of the houses, could we make it a condition of accepting this for those councillors who will vote to say, we'll only approve it on the condition that off-street parking is provided?
Councillor Dady, that could be a condition that could be imposed. And then, of course, the applicant will be at liberty to apply to the planning authority for provision to make off-street parking to the front of those dwellings. And, you know, the curbs will then be dropped to the Local Highways Authority standard, you know, and a crossover will be provided to those two properties. So, yeah, that's another option. Just to clarify, Councillor Dady, a car-free development can be an imposition of a condition. You have it sometimes in built-up areas, in urban built-up areas where, you know, in London, for example, where parking is a real issue. And then the permits, on-street parking permits, are removed from the development. Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification. Is there no one else who wishes to speak? I think I concur with Councillor Anthony Dady. I think if one of the possibilities we could do is propose that that parking could be part of the development, so that it's parking in the front of the property. So separate parking for these two houses would not add to the parking problems in the other in the street.
Madam Chair, I think with the way in which the cul-de-sac is laid out, that could be achieved. As you can see, there are open verges that lead up to all the dwellings along Brooks Grove, wide enough to allow for that drop curve for the crossover to the properties.
Yeah, yeah. Councillor Watt, and then, oh, actually, can we ask our legal person, please, Jamie, to jump, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Watt.
Chairman, thank you very much for that. By the sounds of the discussion, it almost appears that you're not satisfied with the information before you to be able to make this decision on the parking, whether or not it's appropriate, and I defer slightly to Ian really on this, as to whether or not you want to defer to seek more planning information prior to it, because I am slightly concerned that we can't change the application before us to start talking about the imposition of parking spaces on the plot when that's not what's before us. Yeah. Edward, Ian, I'd be happy for your view on that. I have to say I've not really come across this before, because it appears that you're partly discussing the fact that if the information comes in, then you would look to possibly impose another condition on a planning permission that's been issued.
Sorry, Jamie, that's not what we would normally do. We would be guided by the results of the survey, and yes, the survey would justify or not, depending on the results, that there is ample on-street parking or there isn't.
But if there isn't, how would that then be dealt with?
Yeah, and that's where I'm saying that the applicant could go ahead and provide a further evidence that there is, and again, that would be referred to the local planning, the local highways authority, because it's a pre-commencement condition. The development won't be able to take place until he's demonstrated that. Now, with regards to the imposition of a condition at this stage, if members feel that it's appropriate, that could be legitimately offered to the applicant, that, you know, the scheme should make provisions for off-street parking.
Right, so you're suggesting that if the members are so minded, never mind the parking survey, it is the fact that you would suggest that we can add that condition now.
Yeah, you can, because it's an officer's recommendation, and members could resolve to impose a further condition on the applicant. That's also in line, not removing the parking beat survey, but a further condition that says, you know, we would, irrespective of the parking, well, not irrespective, but the imposition that the applicant should make provision for off-street parking to those proposed dwellings. And of course, you know, they would have to then come back with satisfaction to demonstrate to the local planning authority that they've met that, by way of showing, you know, it would be subject to the standards of the local highways authority, because you can't just, you know, put paving slabs on there. It has
I'm just slightly conscious that if you, well, that's the slight concern I have about imposing that condition, when in effect it would change the development, would it not?
Well, there is a condition at the moment that says you've got an option. There's a condition that says pre-commencement parking beat survey. Yeah, that is clearly set out for members. A debate has taken place as to the level of parking, and members have expressed a view which is, to some extent, not having the benefit of an empirical study of a survey carried out by the applicant that could be interrogated at this stage. So some members are expressing the view that the survey may well be adverse and not in favor of the applicant, but we don't know that because we don't have the survey to hand. But there is no way that the development can go ahead until that survey meets the standard of the local highways authority to demonstrate that there is ample off-street parking, not just in Brooks Grove, but Welland Road, and that survey is being carried out in line with the particular standards set out by the Highways Authority. and the empirical evidence is satisfactory to the Highways Authority. And they will in turn, as a statutory consultee, inform us that they're satisfied. Yeah.
Okay.
Councillor Brown. And then, Councillor Watt and then Councillor Brown, sorry. Because I did say Councillor Watt.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Talking about off-street parking and the access to off-street parking, of course, when off-street parking is put in place, it obviously stops on-street parking on that driveway, so that then it impinges upon the availability of on-street parking. To facilitate off-street parking for these two properties, I suspect there is no off-street parking because it is very, very difficult to achieve. That the adjoining properties, as it goes into a sort of triangle shape, it is very difficult to gain access. And of course, this may impinge again on existing parking for the existing properties on the street. So the parking is a really big issue.
Councillor Brown, do you want to?
If they carried out the survey and they come back that it was acceptable, is that something that we would have to accept, or can we still go against their sort of, they're saying yes, that they think it's acceptable?
I mean, the survey's results will be published once the statutory consultee, the local highways authority, has interrogated the survey results, and obviously the comments of the Highways Authority will also be publicly available. So at that stage, if it is adverse, there is nothing stopping anybody saying that that pre-commencement condition can't be fulfilled by the applicant, and effectively means that the development can't go ahead, because they need to be able to demonstrate that there is ample off-street parking without creating any stress to occupants within the local area, the immediate and local surrounding area.
Councillor Addison.
Thank you, Chair. Would it be possible for us to defer until after we've had the survey? That seems to me a more sensible route to take, but I'll be guided by officers and other members.
I must admit I agree with you there, Councillor Addison. I almost feel like we're just putting the cart before the horse.
Sorry, I just defer to the case officer to answer that, Councillor.
Sorry, I didn't hear that. That was breaking up.
Sorry, Councillor Addison said, could we not defer until we've had the beat survey?
Yes, we could certainly request the applicant submits a park and beat survey and get the results of that and the opinion of the Highway Authority before coming back to committee with it.
Yeah. So would anybody like to propose that we defer this? Councillor Addison, you'd like to
defer, Chair?
Yes.
Chair, can I just say that we can either say we defer to the results of the survey, in which case if it is positive for the applicant it goes ahead, or we say now we approve it on the results of the survey. So both results would be the same.
Thank you, Councillor Watt, but I'm not getting that feeling from the other councillors. Councillor Brown, you're muted.
Yeah, I agree. I think we need to have the survey first before we make any decision.
Chair, I think basically, and just in summary, you're basically saying you want to defer it on the basis of having insufficient information to be able to assess the highway's impact.
Yes.
So you basically want the parking survey to actually understand what the highway's impact will be of the development, and then it will effectively, if you were deferring on that basis, it would then come back to this committee for decision when we effectively have that information. So hopefully at that point you would have all the information that you require at your disposal to make a decision. So that's the decision that would be I would be suggesting that you made this evening.
Thank you. Thank you for that clarity, Ian. I think that's what we are saying. Councillor Kane.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, spot on, Ian, and I happily second Jean's proposal.
I think we will propose that this be deferred until the survey has been brought out and then been brought back to committee before we decide one way or the other. So, Councillor Addison, you propose that. Councillor Kane seconds that. I shall speak individually to ask the councillors their feelings, other than obviously, sorry, Anthony, Councillor Dady. So, Councillor Addison, are you for this?
For.
Councillor Kane?
For.
Councillor DL?
For.
Councillor Sims?
Against.
Councillor Ferguson?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Watt?
Against.
Councillor Beattie?
For.
So I think we have a majority vote wish to defer this until we've had, due to insufficient evidence, until we've had the BEAT survey. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
And thank you for a robust discussion and some very clear clarification on issues. Thank you. Can we let in the speaker? Oh, can I consult Ian on this? Would you like to clarify the amendments after Mr. Hugill has spoken or before?
No, the normal practice, Chair, will be for us to present the report as officers, which will include going through the amendments, and then clearly once we've presented our report, normally the speaker would have the opportunity to put their 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So can I have the officers to report on the second item, 19/00351/OUT. Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just make a small introduction, as it were? Firstly, the head of planning is going to give a brief contextual intro to this particular scheme.
Thank you.
And then the case officer will pick up, and the case officer's presentation at some stage will yield to allow me to just talk briefly about the affordable housing viability element. And then the case officer will conclude, and I think there will be some closing remarks from the head of planning. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you for explaining that, Edward. That's lovely.
Right, so I'm going to start, Madam Chair. So good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee and members of the public participating via Zoom and viewing online. Can we have the first slide of the presentation, please, Laura? So the application we just go back one, please, Laura. So the application that is before committee in this report is 19/00351/OUT, zones 2 and 3, Priors Hall. The full description of the application is an application for outline planning permission, with all matters reserved except for means of access in relation to the highway access from the A43 and means of access and landscaping in respect of the causeway crossing from Zone 1 for the development of a mixed-use urban extension to include residential development of up to 3,500 dwellings, C3 use, up to 1,000 metres squared of A1 to A5, D1 and D2 uses within 2 local centres, up to 100,000 metres cubed of D1 and D2 community building changing room uses, 2 primary schools D1, a 0.5 hectare reserve site in Zone 3 for flexible land use, educational informal open space, green infrastructure including formal and informal open space, wildlife corridors, landscaping, allotments, orchards and play areas, primary street and pedestrian and cycle network including diversions to existing public rights of way, connections to the surrounding highway, sustainable urban drainage network utilities and transport infrastructure and any necessary groundworks and demolition and extension to local wildlife sites at Priors Hall site, Weldon, Corby. So since the publication of the report, Chair and members, there's been a number of addendums issued. There's been 2 principal addendums issued, which have dealt with a number of inaccuracies that have been picked up in terms of factual inaccuracies in the report. Now, I appreciate, given the changeover that we've had over the weekend with emails, etc., that's caused some problems in terms of those getting to members and members having the amount of time they would like to digest those changes within the addendum that have been picked up. So with your sort of discretion, Chair, if I just work through the report and seek to highlight where some of those changes effectively are. There's a table of amendments that's effectively basically headed up with the application number with officers' comments and reason. So that's the principal table that I will be referring to. So just to quickly run through that in terms of just addressing what the key changes are. In terms of page 2 on the report, paragraph 1.7, there was an omission of the planning application reference number for East Northamptonshire Council, which has now been incorporated in the report. In terms of the top of page 4, paragraph 3.8, the report previously contained the figure 2,078, where it should have been 2,080 dwellings. In terms of page 4, halfway down, paragraph 3.10, the original report didn't include access plans, junction technical notes, or air quality briefing notes in the list of documents that we refer to as part of the application. In terms of page 5, paragraph 3.16, the original report referred to zone 3, where it should have actually referred to zone 2. So moving over the page of my addendum, I'm now on paragraph 5.2, which is page 7 of the original report. The paragraph previously stated reserved matters application, where it should have stated a section 73 minor material amendment application. And further down that paragraph, in terms of 5 point, which is the third paragraph under 5 history on page 7, the paragraph previously contained incorrect figures in that it referred to 1,000 dwellings being built out. That should have read 1,370 dwellings built out. And it also referred to circa 850 more dwellings to come forward, which should have read 470 more dwellings to come forward. So then moving over the page, Chair, to page 8, consultations. There's been some additional information incorporated in the addendum to reflect the latest comments of the Highways Authority, which were not incorporated in the original report. And basically what those cover are some particular comments that have been made around mitigation works to particular junctions related to junction 11, junction 13, junction 15, and reference to the Steel Road roundabout, and certain information around particular conditions that relate to junctions, that relate to construction and drainage plans for off-site works, and in relation to conditions for public rights of way and diversion orders, which have all been picked up within the conditions attached to the report. So moving back to the table, the next paragraph relates to paragraph 9.2, which is on page 20 of the report, where basically there's just an incomplete reference number in that paragraph. It should read 04/00240/OUT. And then moving on to paragraph.
Ian, we seem to have lost the sound.
Apologies, I think I muted myself when I just moved my hand over the keyboard. Apologies. So I'm now on page 21, Chair, paragraph 9.12. The original paragraph in the report referenced 5,500 dwellings. It should have read 5,320 dwellings. Then moving down page 21 to paragraph 10, the section there previously referred to employment land which shouldn't have been included in that paragraph. And there's 3 items that will be added to the list in that paragraph under noise and vibration, to include ground conditions and contamination, agriculture and soil, and services and utilities. So moving on to page 23, Chair, paragraph 11.5. This section previously contained a typo and an additional sentence has been added. The additional sentence has been added to the end of that paragraph 11.5. So where the current full stop is after viability, it would read, therefore, it is considered that overall the proposed development will be a key strategic site in meeting the council's 5-year housing supply. Moving further down page 23, halfway down, paragraph 11.6, the first bullet point there should read, the indicative mix includes 2% one-bed properties, not 20%. Then moving over onto page 24, paragraph 12.1, there's reference there previously to a secondary school provision in the second sentence of that paragraph, which should read primary school provision. I'm now on page 26 of the report, Chair, paragraph 14.5, where there's a correction there in that the relevant, it should just refer to the relevant conditions in that paragraph. So where it talks about a construction management plan and low emission strategy and damage costs, the word relevant will be substituted for those words in that paragraph. Then moving on to page 29, paragraph 18.11. This paragraph didn't clarify that the applicant's contribution to Steel Road should be a proportionate contribution. So effectively that's been changed to reflect that. And then on paragraph 18.15, where it refers to issues around the actual bus strategy, it should say that the bus strategy is actually implemented rather than the bus strategy is to be submitted prior to occupation of any residential unit. On page 29, paragraph 18.20 is struck out of the original report because that work is not required. And then moving on to page 30, paragraph 19.4 didn't in the original report refer to the fact that the application seeks detailed consent for access. So that's been picked up in the addendum. And then in paragraph 19.5, Chair, on page 30, the paragraph referred to 3 villages. However, the design and access statement referred to actually included 4 villages. So it's been amended to reflect that. So on the final page now, Chair, of the addendum. So I'm still on page 30 of the report, paragraph 21.1 now. This paragraph previously stated a maximum height of 4 stories. However, this is only in relation to key buildings, so that clarification has been provided. In relation to page 30, paragraph 22.1, the words including affordable housing in that paragraph should be struck out, because effectively what it does in that paragraph is say that affordable housing is policy compliant. It will be clear from members who've read the report that clearly the affordable housing isn't policy compliant, linked to viability, and that'll be covered off further in the presentation this evening. And then finally, in terms of paragraph 24.8, top of page 32, this paragraph previously stated that each zone was assessed separately. This wasn't the case. The appraisal assessed the combined inputs from each zone. So that concludes the amendments that were made to the report. So hopefully members can see that, you know, that there's not huge changes. We're talking about some changes to individual figures and individual words in paragraphs primarily. Then moving on in terms of the addendum, it then goes on to talk about the conditions. I'm not going to go through all the conditions. I mean, all the conditions are effectively reproduced in this addendum, but principally the reason why those conditions have been reproduced is to ensure that the actual reasons for those conditions are incorporated in the addendum. Because in the original report, not all the conditions actually had reasons for why those conditions were actually being imposed. The only other principal things I wanted to say about the conditions is that in relation to condition, just bear with me a minute whilst my papers catch up with me. In terms of condition 9, which is the reserved matters applications information requirements, paragraph C, after ecological, the additional words in terms of design, mitigation and implementation were added. And then in relation to conditions 17 and 18 of the original report, those conditions have been removed in the addendum as they related to heritage issues, and they applied only in relation to zone 3, which is clearly in terms of East Northants, not Corby Borough Council. And I think in terms of the conditions, Chair, that's all I would need to highlight. And then finally, you'll be glad to hear, there was just a contributions table was produced in the original report. And the only change in the contribution table is really in relation to the first box in that table, where there was a reference to East Northamptonshire Council, ENC, not CBC. And there was also an issue in relation to how the affordable housing mix was confirmed, and that's effectively been clarified in that table. So that concludes the addendums, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification, Ian. It's much appreciated. Amongst the chaos, some people were able to access their emails, some people weren't. So it's thank you. I think that's brought us all up to speed.
So if I may, I'll just continue briefly my introduction and then hand over to the case officer.
Yes, please.
So all of those issues I've just referred to in the addenda were emailed to members and have been publicised on the website with the report and supplementary papers. So going back to the application, as I said, the application seeks outline planning consent with all matters reserved except for means of access for the development of a mixed-use urban extension to include residential development of up to 3,500 dwellings and up to 1,000 metres cubed of community buildings, changing room uses, 2 primary schools, formal sports pitches in terms of 5 pitches, including changing facilities and informal green open spaces, wildlife corridors, landscaping, allotments, orchards, 14 play areas and pedestrian and cycle networks. The application relates to zones 2 and 3 of the Priors Hall site, which lie to the northeast of Corby Centre and immediately to the north and east of the existing Priors Hall Zone 1 development, which has seen 1,370 dwellings built out, along with a secondary school, primary school, community centre, community cafe and the Corby Enterprise Centre, with development of the district centre, including a supermarket, gymnasium, nursery and health centre now starting on site, and circa 470 more dwellings to come forward in Zone 1 to complete the zone under the current outline consent. The principle of a mixed urban use urban extension on Priors Hall has long been established, going back to 2004, and has formed and will continue to form a key, important part of the borough's regeneration through growth and future housing supply and delivery. Urban and Civic, as the master developer who purchased the site from the previous developer Beeler in 2017, after the site stalled, have considerable experience in bringing forward large mixed-use, sustainable urban extensions. The application is a joint application made to both CBC and East Northamptonshire Council, as the development sits within both administrative areas, Zone 2 being principally in Corby Borough Council's area and Zone 3 in East Northants. The application was submitted to East Northamptonshire Council's Planning Committee on the 11th of November and was unanimously approved. So the applicant is now seeking approval from this committee to be able to implement the permission with a view to starting construction in the second quarter of 2021 on zones 2 and 3, with the first residential occupations planned for the second quarter of 2022. I will now hand over to my colleague Taz Amlak, who will take you through the next part of the presentation, starting with the site location. Thank you. If you have the next slide, please, Laura.
Thank you, Ian. If you'd notice, the red line indicates the overall area
following on from the background Ian's provided, showing the overall application boundaries within the red line. If you could go to the second slide, please. As you can see, the red area indicates zone 3, which is within the administrative boundary of East Northants, and the blue area indicates zone 2, which is within the borough of Corby, and the brown area just adjacent to that indicates the zone 1, which also provides the link, providing access between zone 1 and zone 2, and strategically located by the district centre. If we go to the next slide, please. So as Ian's identified, the applications for outline consent with all matters reserved except for access. However, given the developer's track record in being a master developer and front-loading applications with green and grey infrastructure, they provided a tiers approach to the application. This enables officers to maintain a level of control during the further stages of the development, but it also gives the developer a key opportunity to set the benchmark in terms of the parameters for future developments. So tier 1 of that is obviously includes the outline, which involves the parameter plan, which also includes the parameter plan and the development specification, and with that, the site-wide strategies. Tier 2 will go into the key phases, and as you can see in the table, it will be key phase 4, which is in East Northants area, and key phase 1, which is in Corby's area. And during these key phases, there will also be the primary schools delivered and the local centres together with the green infrastructure. If we could go to the next slide, please. So as part of the detailed application is the parameter plan, which sets out the principles for the development, which will govern the forthcoming tiers and the future reserve matters applications. As you can see that the application responds to the constraints of the sites, with that being the conservation area, which is at the north of the site within the administrative boundaries of East Northants. And the parameters plan gives a key consideration to this, which is discussed in the EIA attached to this application, and the exclusion zones, which clearly outline the areas to protect and preserve the Kirby Hall and Kirby Lane, which is also designated heritage assets. In addition to that, there's the wildlife corridor exclusion zones within the Corby end, which also protects the existing wildlife and provides biodiversity enhancements throughout the life of the project as the development goes forward. The parameter plan also sets out the key building heights in terms of massing and the location of key buildings and the local centre and schools to ensure that there's a robust framework for future tiers, and when the future parcels are brought forward via house builders. And in addition to that, it responds to the submitted EIA assessment, which has been robustly assessed by both authorities in consultation with the consultees. And as Ian pointed out, the conditions have reflected those ongoing discussions. If you could change the slide, please.
So, Laura, can you hear us? Hello, Laura.
Laura, can you hear us? Thank you.
Thank you. As you can see with the site is within the blue area of Corby's boundary and responds to the various constraints, and the parameter plan has responded to these constraints and has provided key gateways into the site to ensure that the open landscape settings is preserved as the development comes forward by house builders at reserve matter stage. If you could change the slide, please. As discussed within the environmental impact assessment, additional information was submitted via the addendum in response to updated transport modeling in collaboration with NCC Highways Authority. As a result of this, further works is required to the junctions shown in the PowerPoint slide above. So that's junctions 11, 13, 15, and 17. As a response to that, conditions are attached to this application's recommendation and the associated section 106 to ensure that works of these junctures are captured to ensure that the development coming forward would not be harmful or have a negative impact on the highway network. If we could change slide, please. Overall, within the development specification, you can see that it provides a robust framework for future house builders to build a development which maintains the key principles that was established via the development specification and the parameters plan. In addition to that, the 106 provides a number of benefits via infrastructure, and that has been highlighted within the table which has been addended to this committee report. And overall, there's been a comprehensive approach to this development by the developer, and they've got a track record in providing a master developer process to ensure robust quality throughout the lifetime of the project. And as a consequence, the conditions and Section 106 agreements attached to this will ensure that the authority remain in control of the process and can collaborate with the developer to ensuring the quality going forward. If we could go to the next slide, please. And I'll hand you over to Edward to present on the housing.
Thank you, Taz. Madam Chair, members, I'm just going to touch briefly on the position that officers have adopted with regards to seeking, if you like, further understanding of the provision of affordable housing and interrogating the applicant's viability argument. So a viability assessment has been submitted by the applicant, and it has been interrogated and assessed by an independent assessor. And the position of the independent assessor is that the arguments advanced by the applicant are reasonable and fair, and that the developer's arguments about requirements for 20% affordable housing being unviable are justified. The independent assessor has effectively assisted officers to allow us to, if you like, review that position by way of inclusion of a review mechanism. So if there is an uplift in going forward in the future, that uplift could be captured to the benefit of the local planning authority. In the scenario where the uplift is quite substantial, it would be split 50-50 between the authority and the developer. So the viability review is built into the maximum additional affordable housing delivery beyond 5%. Thank you, and I'd like to hand you back to Taz.
Thank you, Edward.
Thank you, Edward. That being said, with the additional benefits via the Section 106 in terms of infrastructure and the on and off-site contributions in terms of open space and to the education, I urge the committee to maintain the recommendation for approval and approve this application. As noted by Ian at the start of this meeting, East Northampton Council approved this application, and in order for the development to be deliverable, both authorities have to approve the applications. Nevertheless, the conditions and the attached Section 106 has been collaboratively worked together with both authorities to come to a position where we're both happy to recommend approval. Thank you.
Thank you. So I believe we have Mr. Hugill to speak to us. Mr. Hugill, as soon as I get my act together, right. You have 3 minutes to speak to us, please.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant this evening. And I just wanted to recognise that from the outset. By way of introduction, I'm the Chief Executive of Urban and Civic. I'm proud to say that we're one of the most important financially secure placemakers in the country. Urban and Civic is a company that I founded after being responsible for some of the largest projects ever delivered in the UK, including the Stratford Olympic Park and the Athletes Village. The absolute DNA of Urban and Civic is making projects of ours like Prize Hall the very best that we can. We come before you tonight following on from the resolution to grant on Zone 3, as you've heard from East Northamptonshire District Council 2 weeks ago. This application runs in parallel and has been subject to the same rigorous and independent viability assessment as Mr. Otang touched upon. Our way of working is entirely open book, and we will be working to generate further surpluses. There is a joint Section 106 agreement with East Northamptonshire, which is in the process of finalisation. And with continued cooperation, I really hope that can be signed before Christmas. I would not want you to think us presumptuous, but such is the strength of our relationship with Corby Borough and your offices that we work safely and in a fully COVID compliant fashion all through the summer on enabling works in Zone 2. We had 60 earth moving machines operating at full tilt between March and September. It's of course not normal to undertake this level of investment expenditure, again, ahead of a planning application being consented, but you'll know from the presentation to members last week that we are not a normal organisation. That's the effort that we put into creating new environments and establishing new communities. Not normal, but working together in keeping our side of the bargain is the only way we know. The most effective advocates for Urban and Civic's approach are our existing residents. The last parcels in Zone 1, which altogether will total more than 1,800 units, are being built now and at record speed. That all looked most unlikely when we took Prize Hall out of administration in 2017. We've since invested more than £35 million, including having to rectify a fair amount of work which frankly wasn't up to standard. I only wish I could have been with you this evening to attend in person, but the message conveyed is a simple one. Approving our application will begin a process to see us again spending literally millions of pounds per month in the first quarter of 2021. Our house builders ought to be pouring foundations by the end of that year, with excited first residents occupying their new homes by the middle of 2022. That represents our side of the bargain. Chair, I would like to end by simply repeating the commitment that we will continue to work with Corby to deliver the best that we possibly can in the spirit that's been established. Thank you very much indeed.
Got to unmute myself. Thank you very much. Do we have any councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Kane, followed by Councillor Dady.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got 2 comments, one positive, one not so positive, and a question. And I apologise in advance if I should know the answer to my question, but I was not able to make the briefing. I'm disappointed about the reduction in affordable housing. I would like to have seen higher than 5%, but I'm very pleased to see on the plans 12 play areas, because I think that's really important for our actually you know, over the last few months during COVID, where we've seen people that are trapped in their houses with no play areas to go to. So I'm really pleased to see that. My question is to do with the environmental standard of the houses. And again, apologies if I should have picked up on this, but what are the plans for things such as solar panels, electric charging points? What is the insulation being used? Are heat pumps being put in? Because we've got to get rid of our gas central heating systems sooner rather than later. And is there any plan for wind turbines to wind power any of the housing? Thank you.
Who would like to answer this? Which officer would like to answer this one?
Yeah, I'm going to politely yield to the case officer, Taz.
Thank you.
Thank you. With regards to affordable housing, officers acknowledge in terms of the 5%, it is disappointing. And whilst we always strive to deliver the greatest amount of affordable housing, we are obviously obligated in terms of the NPPF, in terms of viability, to assess the developers' contributions and the costs to bring forth the development. And the excessive infrastructure costs, as well as the broad range of services that the developer will be providing, there was obviously quite high construction costs, which obviously affected the overall profitability of the site. Notwithstanding this, officers, went to an assessment because the initial application had zero affordability provided. Officers went through negotiations with the developer to go via independent assessment, and as a consequence, we've managed to, get 5% from this development. So whilst it's disappointing, it is a contribution in light of viability. And with the review mechanisms that Edward pointed out, there is scope for further affordable housing to be delivered should profitability increase as the development comes forward. And I believe the second point was in relation to renewable energy. So in terms of renewable energy, the overall sustainability issue is picked up in the site-wide strategies. However, there is a degree of flexibility for individual house builders to bring developments forward with a bespoke kind of sustainability mix as technology increases and improves over time. So it is captured within the conditions and the site-wide strategies, but there is that degree of flexibility to allow house builders to maximise sustainability measures going forward.
Thank you, Tess. Does that answer your question, Councillor Kane?
Partly. I'm not entirely happy about the sustainability side of things and the renewable energy. That sounds a bit vague. I'd like to see us have a ground level. This is the minimum we would accept as a council, but that is obviously for a different conversation outside this meeting.
Thank you. Who was next? Councillor Dady, were you?
I'll go next if you'd like.
And then
Right, thank you. Yeah, similar to what Ken said, I would like to see more than 5%, and I do hope that happens, although I am pleased to see on Appendix B the amount of contributions that are being made. Also, similar to what Councillor Kane said, I would very much like to see more environmentally sustainable things being put in place at some stage. Now, my question, I think, might be more one for Ian to answer. It's something I brought up before, but I'd like more clarification. I know in the local plan committee, we did discuss a policy where a certain amount of plots have to be available for self-build. I think it was 5% on a scheme of this size. Now, was that just something that was proposed? Did that plan was that policy never put in place? Or are we saying on this case, we're not going to put that policy, not going to make use of that policy? Basically, I'd like to know the situation with regards to self-build housing plots on this development. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to come back on that, Ian?
Yes, Chair. I mean, clearly, planning policy were consulted in relation to this report, and that issue effectively, I don't believe, has been raised in terms of the consultation comments. I mean, Taz, if Taz has got any further information to add in relation to the case officer about the policy consultation on that, then please do. But on the basis of the fact that that's not effectively addressed in the final report, then as a policy comment, then clearly that's something that is not before members this evening in terms of taking into consideration in relation to their decision. I know it was an issue that was raised at the presentation with the applicant, and the applicant basically says at this point in time that there isn't a proposal on site to actually offer self-build plots. But clearly, given the duration of the scheme, in terms of being a 12-year scheme, then things can potentially change over that period of time. So, it's something that effectively, clearly, if we want to continue to push as an authority, then we can continue to effectively seek to discuss that with developer over that time. But as we speak, as of now, it's not a policy requirement that we're seeking to effectively impose in relation to this decision this evening. So I think that's about as much as I can say about that, Councillor Dady, unless Taz has got anything further he's aware of that he can add.
Thank you, Ian. Just to add, I would add that officers, when assessing that, had to balance the need for new things such as flexible and self-build custom housing with what has already been granted consent and the parameters and constraints of the site. And notwithstanding that, these issues, I think, would have changed potentially the viability position. And given that the application came initially in with 0% contribution, officers' first point of call was to try and provide the much needed affordable housing. And we had to exhaust that. And given that there was no specific policy requirement in terms of the consultees for this type of housing, officers couldn't adhere to it, to pursue it.
Thank you, Taz. Councillor Watt.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding that these present developers, Urban Civic, are a great improvement on the previous developers, and there are many aspects of the...
Can you speak up a little, please?
There are many aspects of the development that are very attractive and beneficial for residents. I too will be one of those councillors that will grind our teeth about the affordable housing. I understand the reasons why it has gone down to 5%. I'm disappointed that the most recent affordable housing on the estate was purchased through right to buy grants, where the council purchased some housing off of a developer. I just wonder, it's a 12-year build out. At what point will the estimation be of the overage be, so that we can see if we can have some more affordable housing?
Right, could we come back to you, Taz, or somebody else?
Yes. As Edward pointed out in terms of the viability section, there is a early stage review, and then there's a later stage review after a few years when most of the construction infrastructure costs have been absorbed. So that would be kind of after the tier 2 period. So at that point, it would be a good period to capture any uplift in profitability. And with that being minded, we didn't want to have a point too close at the end, because then there wouldn't be a effective time to deliver affordable housing if necessary.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to speak or ask questions or comment? Thank you. Going back to the issue of self-build, I remember going to a meeting last year and discussing this with several housing officers, and Corby's always had a policy of, encouraging self-build, but we haven't had the uptake. So I don't think at this moment in time there is the uptake. So that's just an add-on from myself. So do we have any proposals for this, any recommendation? Councillor Addison. Councillor Addison would like to propose that we accept the recommendation. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Sims. And I'm going to ask people individually to vote. Councillor Addison, for or against this recommendation?
For.
Councillor Kane?
For.
Councillor Dalziel?
For.
Councillor Sims?
For.
Councillor Dady?
For.
Councillor Ferguson?
For.
Councillor Brown?
For.
Councillor Watt?
For.
Councillor Beattie?
For.
And Councillor Riley, for. So this recommendation has been accepted. Thank you. And that concludes the meeting, the business of this committee today. I would just like to thank everybody who has attended today. I know we've all had challenging times and technical hitches and all sorts of ongoing things. So I appreciate the efforts by everybody this evening, and I'd like to say thank you very much. Thank you, Ian, for your painstaking help tonight as well, and everybody. So